Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's CFO Leadership Council program, the CFO Agenda for 2025, your roadmap for the new year. Thanks to all of you for joining us today, and a special thank you to Oracle NetSuite, the leading integrated cloud business software suite, and today's exclusive webcast sponsor. My name is Stephanie Jarmillo from the CFO Leadership Council, and I'll be facilitating today's session. A quick shout out to team member Nancy Ellers, who's working her magic behind the scenes. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Your lines are muted. However, we encourage all your questions. Type them into the question area on this platform and I'll ask the question on your behalf during the Q&A portion. Today's program qualifies for 1 CPE. To receive credit, you must be a current council member and answer all 4 polling questions. When you sign off today, a quick survey will pop up. Please rate your experience, as your honest feedback helps us reach even further. If you are not a current CFLC member and are interested, let's connect. Annual membership gets you instantly connected with over 2,500 finance peers and includes CFO Connect, our members-only forum, virtual roundtables by industry, and much more. Learn more by downloading our membership factsheet, available in the handout section of this platform. Registration is open for our 2025 conferences. Our spring conference will take place in Boston and the fall conference in Austin, Texas. The speakers, insights, connections gained there are second to none. We are also just wrapping up our very first Finance and Accounting Technology Expo in October, and we are excited to share that FATE will be back in New York City on November 2025. Our newly launched Finance and Accounting Tech Briefing may be a great resource to you as you address your tech stack. It gives you the pulse on the latest tech. Visit our site to subscribe today. Lastly, follow us online for the latest news. Our 33 chapters are in full swing with live monthly programs on all the latest hot topics. Check out our full calendar online. Speaking of hot topics, let's shift gears to the big reason we've gathered. A warm welcome to Megan O'Brien, CFO Content Manager at Oracle NetSuite. Megan covers the latest trends in business strategies for finance executives. Her role includes conducting proprietary research, writing various types of executive-focused content, and co-hosting the NetSuite podcast. Megan formerly served as a content creator at Deloitte, where she worked with the C-suite programs with a focus on CFO offerings. Megan, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. All right, go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, so to understand the finance team's agenda for 2025, we first have to understand the background, the landscape that they're operating in, things that they are prioritizing, challenges and concerns they might have, things like that. As CFOs look to 2025, their plan of action might be best described as taking measured risks for growth while building stability, all with a very hefty emphasis on technology initiatives. Executives understandably still have concerns about continuing economic and geopolitical uncertainty, including impacts from the US and other global elections. So, when asked to select 3 external risks that worry them most, US CFOs put geopolitics near the top at 52%, trailing only inflation and the economy. Their European counterparts, though, exhibited much more intense geopolitical fears, with 98% of respondents saying that they expected their business to be impacted by geopolitics, with protectionism and global trade, the expansion of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, climate change concerns, and increased ransomware and cyber attacks ranking high on their list of concerns. While CFOs will plan for many scenarios, a key part of their strategy will be focusing on what they can control. One of the main focus areas within that is progressing their company's technology investments. In IBM's CFO survey, leading CFOs and CTOs leading CFOs said CTOs are their most important relationship, with 72% identifying them as highly important or critical. And 65% of CEOs said that their organization's success is directly linked to the quality of collaboration between the technology and finance functions, which is huge when you think about it. I mean, CFOs and CEOs, that used to be the big relationship, and it still is, but you're seeing that emphasis from CFOs saying technology outcomes are directly linked to financial outcomes. We need to connect these two. Now, with that in mind, we've compiled a multitude of ideas drawn from interviews with finance leaders on areas that they are focusing on to build growth and resilience in their organization. And technology is a clear thread throughout. I included quotes throughout the presentation as well from finance leaders that we interviewed, which kind of bolsters the point that we're making and gives it just a little bit of perspective. But before we jump into all that fun stuff, we're going to go ahead and get into our first poll question.
If you had to choose one, which of the following is your company's top external risk in 2025? Options are inflation, geopolitics, cybersecurity, and economy.
And something that, we've seen, I'd be very surprised if inflation and the economy didn't rank somewhat high. But I think cybersecurity is the one that tends to get a moderate amount of votes from people. And I have to apologize to the CFO LC team. For some reason, when I have it in presenter mode, I cannot see the outcome of the polls. So I am just kind of summarizing what I'm thinking.
You are totally fine. You are right. So we have roughly 79% of everyone voting, but it seems our top one is economy, geopolitics, inflation, and cybersecurity. No one's really kind of interested in interest rate right now at the moment with 6%.
Yeah, I mean, those are all pretty major factors right now as there's a lot of uncertainty there, and we are going to get into a lot of factors driving that and how finance leaders are handling it, which I think will really resonate. All right, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide. So, to start, our first theme is around using data visibility to push financial goals. Inflation, it might have cooled, we hope. But the recent years' sudden spikes and speedy drops in prices and shifts in customer demand have left companies with a lot of added costs and complexity. One top priority for cost reduction is supply chain, manufacturing, and procurement. So, in a survey by BCG or Boston Consulting Group, nearly two-thirds of the 600 global executives that they interviewed said that they're prioritizing supply chain and manufacturing costs over other historically popular cost-cutting targets, such as labor overhead and marketing and sales. For example, one major US-based apparel maker this year announced a plan to derive $100 million in savings from its operation, with the bulk of it coming from efficiencies in the company's supply chain. To lower manufacturing and supply chain costs, companies can optimize procurement, logistics networks, and distribution and warehousing, and invest in digital lean manufacturing and advanced planning processes. Another way that CFOs can flex their cost-cutting muscles, if you will, is around effective demand forecasting. Consumer buyer patterns are constantly changing, and there may be fixed costs there that sales volumes no longer justify. Companies have to be sure that their product mix is resonating with consumers and dropping or selling off those product lines that just don't meet performance standards. Now, Raw Sugar is a health and beauty brand. You might have seen some of their products in Target. Their CFO, Jonathan Weiss, said that understanding demand has taken on an increased importance in its role with the health and beauty brand over the last couple of years. And now he's creating these different reports over different time periods to analyze the trends and purchasing patterns so he can understand what exactly they need to invest in and what they need to back off on. Now, as automation helps alleviate CFOs and their teams from numerous finance and accounting tasks that used to be very manual and time consuming, many are putting a greater emphasis on financial planning and analysis, or FP&A. 58% of CFOs said that they're dedicating more time to FP&A compared to a year ago. And that's due to multiple reasons, but a huge reason why is that AI technologies, they're allowing for better predictive forecasting and complex scenario modeling, and that can help teams improve predictions around areas such as revenue growth, cost fluctuations, and customer demand, and ultimately drive more informed decision making throughout the organization. Especially given their concerns about near-term volatility and uncertainty, it's integral that CFOs have a robust planning process and are able to forecast future cash flows with continuous updates and prepare for a wide range of future potential scenarios. Now, CFOs also showed that they're focusing more on business fundamentals, with 58 of respondents to a PwC survey saying that they're dedicating more time to business performance management compared to a year ago. And I don't need to tell you guys, CFOs, they've always loved their KPIs. But now leaders want to track a wider range of KPIs in finance and also operations areas. And they're wanting to share those metrics with more easily with other leaders in the organization to make the metrics kind of the foundation of performance conversation with sales and production, human resources, and similar groups. So for that to happen, you got to look for software that automatically centralizes data from across the business and includes built-in capabilities for automatically tracking KPIs so the finance team can easily view and share up-to-date metrics via dashboards and status reports. However, the big point of emphasis in business performance management that I wanted to highlight, I find it interesting, um, is around productivity and efficiency. So in Deloitte's Q3 2024 CFO Signal survey, 48% of CFOs ranked efficiency and productivity as their top internal risk, surpassing strategy execution, Gen AI adoption, and even hiring and retention. In fact, it only fell behind technology transformation, which came in as the top ranked concern at 49%, so barely behind that. With efficiency, productivity, and technology top of mind, it's no surprise that several CFOs that we talked to, including Raw Sugar's Jonathan Weiss, noted their emphasis on standardizing processes in their technology systems and eliminating time consuming ad hoc tasks outside of established workflows as top priorities in 2025. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the second poll question already.
Sounds good, Megan. The question is, if you had to choose one, which of the following is your company's top internal risk in 2025? So we're getting a couple early votes in, and a lot of them are saying efficiency and productivity, but it's getting close to strategy and execution.
Yeah, I mean, strategy execution is such a big one. That's why I was so surprised that it came behind. Um, because I mean, it's kind of the core part of business, but in some ways it could be maybe too broad of a subject, and people are like, well, what does that mean? But I think that the fact is that there's all these tools out there now that are enhancing efficiency and productivity that I think businesses are worried of if we don't adopt these tools in time or don't use them well enough, are we going to go ahead and fall behind everyone else here? And that's, I think, why it's kind of catapulting it to a top concern because it does impact uh, the company's competitiveness.
Yeah, I think the audience agrees with you. 38% agreed strategy execution, and 37% said efficiency and productivity. It's really neck and neck.
Perfect. And then, sorry, we're We had a little issue. I tried to see the uh, the
The
things,
polls,
the polls coming in, and I screwed it up. Can you see the slide still?
not at the current moment.
Oh, that's weird. Sorry about
We'll
the
get the
tech
slides right
difference.
back.
We'll just get there. This is why you shouldn't mess with it. Once it's done, just go with it. Sorry, everyone. Let me get this back in presenter mode. Okay,
We can see your slides.
perfect. Thank you. All right, so driving AI initiatives forward. Speak of the devil. Now, most financial leaders at this point understand the potential of AI and generative AI. However, where to apply AI in their finance organization, it might be just a little less clear cut. In the interviews we've done with leaders in the tech space, the advice has been very consistent. Start small, learn from mistakes quickly, and be specific about use cases. We do have a lot of people kind of say, we want to just apply AI to the whole organization, which that enthusiasm is awesome. But the fact is that it's a little too vague to kind of enact, and it also ends up just being a little disjointed and expensive. So instead, think of good use cases that fit your organization's specific circumstances, and then relate them back to the broader strategic goals of the organization. And if you're still stumped on where to apply AI, consider asking your employees. Many times they have a process that they hate, that they want to automate or think could be more efficient. Potential areas could include bill capture or account reconciliations. So in this quote on the right here, Jess from Vitalized Health, which is a value-based care platform, she recalls how one team member took the initiative to propose a more efficient and effective way of handling bank payments, which was a huge time-consuming process before. And it ended up working so well that Jess promoted her to accounts payable director. And it's something that Jess fully said she would not have thought of on her own. The thing to remember here, though, as we're going forward, is that AI investments, they don't necessarily have a finish line in sight. We've only scratched the surface in terms of AI capabilities and applications. So it's important to approach investments with an eye for quality, company fit, and longevity. Now, this is probably one of the most important points that I can make around AI. As teams identify tasks on which they would like to apply AI, they should look at whether AI capabilities are available within their existing software tools. The majority of companies don't have the resources to develop or train AI models on their own. Companies like Meta and Google and Amazon, that's kind of their bread and butter. They have a lot of data and a lot of resources to do this. It's not a useful point of resources for most companies. Instead, using AI powered features embedded within their platform can provide an easy, low cost point of entry. And where teams are starting to see some of the benefits from AI, according to research by IBM, is around lowering sales forecast errors, reducing uncollectible balances, and decreasing the time spent on budget cycles and the monthly close. So, for example, and kind of a bit of a plug here, NetSuite has started embedding AI capabilities into the system at no cost to NetSuite customers to help NetSuite customers easily start adding AI into their business. For instance, NetSuite offers AI assistant capabilities that use data and automation from the suite to handle repetitive tasks, including finance anomaly detection, content generation, invoice processing, and analytics, which helps increase accuracy, speed up work, and free employees to focus on other work. NetSuite also offers AI advisor capabilities, which includes data discovery, forecast explanations, and predictive planning to deliver faster, better insights and analysis to help guide leaders, improve outcomes, and support more informed decision making. So Packer Fastener, a distributor of fasteners and industrial supplies. They started by actually experimenting with the AI capabilities available in its NetSuite applications. The team first used AI features embedded in its NetSuite Analytics Warehouse data warehousing tool to highlight patterns and outliers and run predictive models designed for specific use cases. And once they kind of built that foundation of AI usage, it's now experimenting with other applications, more complex machine learning prediction models. Now, a workforce supported by AI capabilities promises to create more value than people or machines can deliver alone. But CFOs and their finance team need training to make that a reality. So I talked about this in a previous webinar, but it's crazy the gap between executive teams wanting their employees to have AI skills and the actual amount of companies providing learning programs. There's a huge gap there. And a lot of the learning is happening because people are taking it upon themselves to go check out a LinkedIn course or whatever it might be. And what actually has to happen is there has to be a more concentrated effort at formalized training. Now, finance professionals, they don't have to know how to code or become some sort of data scientist to have an AI coworker. Instead, they should focus on building strong data literacy skills, including data visualization, statistical analysis, and data modeling. And while AI can help identify patterns and trends within the data, finance employees need to have the analytical mindset and the critical thinking skills it takes to interpret and understand the implications of the data. And as the finance field, as I was saying, as it is in constant flux, you need to make sure that employees do have the opportunity to stay current by taking courses on AI fundamentals and AI applications in finance, attending industry conferences, or participating in online communities to remain at the forefront of industry developments. Now, this might take you all aback. That may be a real shock, but a common theme that we're seeing here is giving finance staff normal hours and fewer fire drills. In a survey by EY, about 70% of respondents said that fewer accountants entering the profession will cause a moderate to significant disadvantage in how well their functions perform in the next 5 years. And further, 63% say that the retirement of senior tax professionals and accounting executives will cause moderate to significant disadvantage in the function. So, in response to the shortage, both professional organizations and the businesses themselves are taking action to fill the pipeline. In September 2024, the AICPA and NASBA, they proposed a new pathway to CPA licensure. If passed, the CPA competency-based experience pathway, quite the mouthful, it would provide an additional option for CPA candidates to demonstrate the professional and technical skills after earning a bachelor's degree and meeting their state's requirements for accounting and business courses, instead of having to complete an extra year's worth of college credits, which will hopefully lower the barrier to entry a bit here. But companies are also looking to attract and retain accounting talent by using technology to bring higher value work earlier in the career path. So the SVP of Global Accounting from Vitalize Health, Jess, she really drove this home. She has led our department in implementing a lot of AI and automation, so entry-level accountants aren't stuck doing tedious manual tasks like data entry. Instead, they get to jump ahead into higher value work, which hopefully helps increase retention. Having finance teams work until 1 a.m. every quarter just to close the books or working weekends scrambling to find the numbers to update a forecast or board meeting, it's not exactly great for morale. 53% of CFOs say retaining and attracting talent is either an extensive or a significant struggle. Further, and this is um, a whopping number, but 89% say that talent related barriers are preventing their finance institution from delivering on their purpose and vision. While compensation does play a big role in talent attraction and retention, work-life balance, burnout, and low-value repetitive work are also top-ranked reasons for finance professionals leaving a company or the industry entirely. To increase retention, finance leaders need to focus on initiatives that will help improve their team's work-life balance and experience. And I hate to break it to you, probably going to take more than a pizza party. Instead, a lot of companies are looking at using technology to achieve that work-life balance. So the CFO from Packer Fastener, he talked about how he was coming from an organization that did 60 to 70-hour weeks, especially when they were at the month-end close. And now, as CFO of Packer Fastener, they don't have it in their organization. They've done so much automation that their employees are out by 4:30 or 5 pretty much every single day of the week. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, there is still concern about geopolitics and the economy and things like that. But the fact is that CFOs have kind of held back for so long that they're ready to explore growth opportunities. Maybe a little bit risk adverse, but still ready to explore those. And so the first thing that we're looking at is the M&A landscape. In a survey of senior executives and deal-making advisors, 70% of respondents expected a stronger US M&A landscape in the next 12 months. And after the US election, that number might have edged even higher just because the Trump administration is expected to contest fewer mergers. And private equity is a significant driver behind that resurgence, with 70% of surveyed deal makers believing private equity investors will drive M&A growth in 2025. Why? Pretty simple. The firms have about $2.5 trillion in available capital that they're looking to deploy. So companies are looking for PE investments to accelerate growth and achieve business transformation goals. In terms of preparing for that, CFOs should review their portfolios to prepare for strategic deals. They should evaluate current assets, financial performance, growth potential, risk profile, and alignment with the company's overall strategic objectives. On the acquisition side, CFOs should focus on building strong due diligence capabilities and having a list of potential targets in place. From a divestiture perspective, they should ensure that their operations are due diligence ready, aka having very clear financial and operating data on hand, and even potentially have a list of potential buyers in mind. Now, IPOs in 2024, they started to show a gradual resurgence from their 2022-2023 lows. IPO proceeds in the first 3 quarters of 2024 outpaced 2023's full year levels, with 121 IPOs in the US exchanges, raising about $27.3 billion. Overall sentiment looking towards 2025 seems to be a sense of cautious optimism. However, the end of 2024 also showed how capricious markets can be. After the US election results were announced in mid-November, the Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500 index soared to record highs, and the VIX, which is Wall Street's basically fear gauge, it dropped rapidly. But 2 weeks later, expectations tempered out a bit, and some of that post-election rally was lost. The lesson of that for IPO aspirants is that the window for going public can open and close without all that much warning. And so companies contemplating an IPO should start preparing now, emphasizing things like sustainable growth, strategic positioning, and effective liquidity management. It's not really the IPO market of years past where investors were ready to throw some money at any company that had like a somewhat decent vision. They are a little bit more cautious and discerning now. So they are going to look for those different focus areas. But these steps also help you run a better, more focused business today as well. So they are a benefit to uh, to a company, even if an IPO still remains pretty far on the horizon. Now, with lower interest rates, CFOs need to consider smart, targeted investments to drive their organization forward. In a report by PNC, surveyed CFOs ranked technology as their top spending area after a rate cut, specifically around cybersecurity and fraud, cloud computing, and automation. And then capital expenditures, hiring, and bank borrowing follow pretty closely behind as priority spending areas. To support both the cost-cutting initiatives that we mentioned previously, as well as growth-related investments, look into an ERP platform that provides real-time visibility into financial data from across the organization. For in addition to providing some of the visibility that you need into performance and resources, it sets the foundation for more advanced techniques, such as predictive modeling, data analytics, and scenario analysis to assess potential investments. Now, not surprisingly to any of you, most companies are borrowers. In a survey by Duke University's School of Business, as well as the Federal Reserve Banks of Richmond and Atlanta, 70% of respondent firms and 90% of large firms have existing debt. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, what's the big deal? The fact is that most of that debt will come due in the next few years. And as the companies deal with debt maturing, many of them are actually going to refinance at a higher interest rate. In the same survey by PNC, only 5% of companies with a loan or bond maturing in the next 12 months plan to pay off the loan. Instead, 63% said that they intended to refinance with the same or a different bank. 27% said that they would raise capital from private equity, non-bank lenders, and private investors, showing the increasing influence of private debt in the marketplace as businesses look for more flexible terms than a traditional bank loan. So for CFOs with maturing debt, they're going to need to evaluate the optimal capital structure for their companies. This returns again to our theme of data visibility because they're going to have to take a look at key leverage ratios, their ability to finance a potential acquisition, best refinancing loan length. So a shorter term loan might be more beneficial than the more typical 5 to 10-year loan length, considering the higher interest rates. Using a financial management solution, finance leaders can better assess liquidity and cash flow positions, build dashboards with important metrics, and provide lenders or investors with the information that they need. Unsurprisingly, more surprisingly, cybersecurity really took on a big role in the interviews that we had with executives. The stakes around cybersecurity are increasing quite dramatically. The average cost of a data breach in 2024 was $4.88 million, which is a 10% increase over 2023 and the highest total ever recorded. And it may seem like, oh, that's a technology problem. But the fact is that CFOs are experts in risk management, making them natural allies to the CISO or the CIO in their cybersecurity plans. Technology executives should consult CFOs on cybersecurity plans, making sure that they reflect the company's overall financial risk. Do they sufficiently guard systems that protect, process, and store the organization's most valuable data? Do they help employees across the organization spot fraudulent emails and calls and other scams? Those are getting harder to spot. Now, one important area to consider is new AI initiatives. In a 2024 survey by IBM, only 24% of surveyed C-suite executives said that their current generative AI projects have a component to secure the initiatives, even though 82% of respondents said that secure and trustworthy AI is essential to the success of the business. And nearly 70% said innovation takes precedence over security. To address this, it might be worthwhile to develop a company AI policy. A company AI policy is going to vary by organization, but what it is in general is it offers guidelines that govern the deployment, the development, and the use of AI within a company. And with that policy in place, employees better know whether they're within organizational standards and whether or not they're using AI in the right places. There might be places where you don't want to apply it. CFOs on their teams are now having an increasing amount of regulatory reporting obligations around cybersecurity. So, as many of you probably know, in 2023, the SEC finalized its cyber disclosure rules, which requires public companies to give investors prompt, decision useful information about material cybersecurity incidents, as well as periodic information on their approaches to cyber risk management, strategy, and governance. So for finance teams, that means understanding cyber risks and incidents is very important because they have to determine materiality. They also have to understand their company's cyber risk management, strategy, and governance so they have confidence in the accuracy and integrity of the information they're giving to the board of directors and in their annual 10K disclosure. And for CFOs to fulfill both of these capacities, it requires a very close relationship with the CISO, the general counsel, and potentially the CIO and CTO, as well as the CEO. In addition to the SEC requirement, companies should be aware of other cybersecurity requirements that they might be subject to. So there's one by the New York State Department of Financial Services. The European Union has some pretty strict rules around it. So does the California Consumer Privacy Act. So it's just important to know what cybersecurity regulations might apply to you. This is a huge part that I think flies under the radar, but it's very important. Cyber insurance, it can be a valuable protection against the financial impact of a cyber incident. It covers high cost areas such as lost revenue to business interruptions, incident response, legal expenses, ransom payments, and data breach recovery. However, because security breaches are becoming more common and more costly, a lot of insurers are actually raising premiums, limiting coverage, and adding security requirements for companies. So CFOs need to work with their technology partners to make sure the company has the right cyber insurance policy in place and that it covers everything that they expect. Common exclusions include losses caused by insider threats, attacks that exploit a vulnerability that was known to the business, or breaches of third party vendors or other partners. So if you're working with a third party and they get breached, and in turn you get breached through them, there's a chance your cyber insurance isn't going to cover that. So while many insurers are continuing to provide coverage for certain aspects of AI related risks, it is essential in that regard as well to review policy language for limitations, exclusions, or any sort of triggers that might be there. Given everything that's going on in politics right now, this is a pretty hefty topic, so buckle up, everyone. Let's dive into a couple of regulations to keep an eye on. The real hot topic, tariffs. So, as a candidate, President-elect Donald Trump said that he would impose a 10 to 20% tariff across the board on imports, possibly 60% on imports from China. And we've also heard some debates about Canada and Mexico as well. So, time will tell how this all plays out. It has changed a lot, but businesses are already preparing for multiple different scenarios. 75% of surveyed executives said that a universal 10% minimum tariff on imports would significantly hinder their company's growth. One US shoemaker recently announced that it would actually reduce production in China in response to just the proposal of tariffs. And some companies are already stocking up on imported goods and inputs ahead of time. Many CFOs work closely with their supply chain and procurement teams, or even manage them as a part of their role. However, that close working relationship will become even more integral over the next several months as companies gauge the impact of potential tariffs and ways to mitigate it. For many companies, this could mean changing or adding suppliers, stocking up on inventory, or possibly raising prices. Having a complete and current data on costs, inventory, and sales trends will be essential for these critical decisions. With that, we're at poll question number 3.
So, third poll question states, if enacted, what impact would tariffs have on your business? And I think that's a really hot topic, Megan, and we're getting a quite a bit of votes really quickly.
Yeah. And I've been surprised at like some of the response I've gotten. I kind of thought everyone would say a pretty negative impact. That not always the case. So it's definitely reflects a wide range of different businesses and different purposes. So it will be interesting to hear how this audience responds.
So we have most of our audience voting, and we're getting 43% of somewhat negative impact and 32% of they just don't know how it's going to impact them. And I think that's kind of reflective of the current environment.
Yeah, definitely reflective of that. The fact, I mean, I was making these slides and I feel like the tariff percentage amounts changed a million times. So it is hard to know, but important to just keep an eye on as we go forward into a new administration. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide. I don't know if some of you guys have heard this term yet, but it is Taxmageddon, apparently. So in 2025, US lawmakers will confront a lot of major tax policy expirations, the majority of which stem from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or TCJA, of 2017. And in its tax plan, President-elect Donald Trump proposed a couple different things, extending Section 199A of the TCJA, which allows many owners of different types of businesses and some trust and estates to deduct up to 20% of qualified business income. It also includes restoring business tax provisions, including 100% bonus depreciation provision, as well as deduction for R&D expenditures and a beta-based interest limitation. Lastly, there's also a pretty big thing about lowering the corporate income tax rate from 21 to 20%, and then further reducing that to 15% for companies that make their product in the US. It's also, the president-elect has also talked about repealing tax credits enacted as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, which provided incentives for the production and use of green energy. Now, whether or not these corporate tax changes are actually going to be enacted remains to be seen. Both parties have indicated wanting to use 2025 as a broader opportunity to reshape tax policy. Consequently, finance chiefs need to be pretty nimble around possible changes that could be drastic and model how potential changes might affect them and plan for impacts. So, for example, if Section 199A looks likely to expire, affected businesses may want to consider strategies to accelerate income and defer deductions to take advantage of lower tax rates in 2025 and consider restructuring their business's tax structure. Now, more and more companies are facing carbon accounting mandates globally, which requires them to quantify the amount of greenhouse gases they produce directly and indirectly. So, for instance, Europe has enacted some rules that apply to many US companies operating there, where companies that have revenue of at least $168 million in the EU are going to have to disclose carbon emissions. There was also a pending rule by the SEC that would require companies trading on US stock exchanges to disclose climate related risks that might materially affect their business. Um, Many are now doubtful that that rule is going to take effect under a new administration, but it is hard to see how that will play out. Aside from that proposed regulation, similar regulations in California are inching forward despite opposition and would require both public and privately held entities with over $1 billion in revenue to report Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Outside of that, there's numerous other location-specific reporting requirements, including Australia, Japan, and South Africa. So even the point of all this is even if current regulations don't apply to your business, the risk is there. So start preparing now with a plan for compliance and understanding your company's capabilities and limitations in carbon tracking, because most likely somewhere down the road, one of these rules or new rules are going to impact you. And as we get into our last section here, and kind of the most fun one, I think, it's around reshaping your finance team's future. Now, CFOs establish themselves as a strategic partner to the rest of the organization by sharing their understanding of financial data and showing the related analytics and forecasts to help business leaders execute. So CFOs can set up reoccurring meetings with department heads to discuss each team's strategic priorities, financial implications, and mutual support opportunities. To get the most out of each touch point, consider building reports that are tailored to each department to help frame their relevant financial information in terms of business impact. And ideally, you would provide a dashboard for ongoing monitoring and discussion. And this is something that the CFO at Packer Fastener has actually embraced. He's meeting one-on-one with leaders of different departments to get on the same page and strategize based on numbers. Now, this is kind of a interesting point. So nearly 2/3 of CFOs said that they were feeling pressure to accelerate ROI across the company's technology portfolio, according to IBM's CFO survey. And as a result, 57% of surveyed finance leaders said that they were prioritizing short-term targets over long-term investments when building their tech stack. Now, the risk here is that they often increase technical debt by sacrificing long-term maintainability for that short-term functionality. In contrast, though, leading CFOs, or roughly about 9% of the data set that IBM identified as outperforming their competition, are much more likely to balance investments focused on efficiency with those with those focused on growth opportunities. To strike that balance, CFOs should select a mix of KPIs that balance both the short and the long term, as well as both intangible and tangible benefits. By tracking and quantifying areas such as revenue growth, productivity, customer satisfaction, and brand impact, CFOs can demonstrate short-term returns while showing how these metrics align with a broader vision of innovation, sustainable growth, and business agility. Another trend that we've seen happen more and more frequently is this idea of enterprise risk management, or ERM. Businesses, they face a wide range of interconnected risks: financial, operational, strategic, cyber, reputational, regulatory, just to name a few. And the fact is that they all impact each other pretty much. For instance, a data breach could lead to regulatory fines, loss of customers, and significant reputational damage, all of which would affect financial performance. For CFOs, that evolving risk landscape means that the traditional approach to risk management won't exactly cut it anymore. Instead, ERM methods and processes can provide a better way for CFOs to monitor and manage risks that might affect financial stability and organizational success. This approach to risk management takes a comprehensive view of risk across the company and how they might interact instead of addressing risk in silos. The CFO in particular plays an integral role in that enterprise-wide approach to risk management because they can work with different department heads across the organization to understand risk and how they might impact the organization's financial position, profitability, and long-term sustainability. And so when looking at a risk management solution, prioritize features such as user roles and permissions, automated controls, customized workflows, and continuous security and vulnerability scans. That these capabilities can help shift risk management from a reactive, siloed approach to a very proactive company-wide culture of risk awareness. Now, lastly, what I wanted to cover here is this idea of transformation and keeping up with the pace. Transformation initiatives have been on the finance team's agenda for years and years. But 2025 really marks a very noticeable sense of urgency from their bosses. An IBM CEO survey, 43% of respondents said that they would increase the tempo of their organization's transformational change over the next 12 months. Now, as transformation efforts accelerate, there are two best practices to keep in mind. First, as we noted in the beginning, collaboration between the finance and technology departments is absolutely crucial as technology strategy and financial outcomes become increasingly interconnected. CFOs should engage with technology leaders early and often to help ensure that technology investments are aligned with financial goals and overall business strategy. And also, as we mentioned, making sure that they're agreed on what measures success in those investments. Secondly, barriers in the transformation process are often centered around people, not necessarily the technology. 64% of CEO respondents said that succeeding with AI will depend more on people's adoption than the technology itself. For executives, getting people on board requires transparency and an enthusiasm that trickles down from the top. And that's something that Jess from Vitalized Health um, really focused on in her process was getting the higher ups, such as the C-suite, the board, the investors, very excited, on board, and understanding of the different technology transformation efforts that they were making. And that way they were able to kind of trickle down that enthusiasm and push from the top. And that helped just kind of helped push the adoption organization wide. With that, we're going to get into our last poll question.
How would you rate the level of collaboration between the finance technology functions at your company? The options are very strong, somewhat weak, very weak, and don't know. So it seems like most of the people are leaning towards somewhat strong, and then
Let's,
there's kind of an equal to very strong and somewhat weak.
yeah, that, I mean, I think I see kind of where that's coming from just because it's relatively recent, this emphasis on collaborating with technology heads. There was a while, not a while, it's always been very important where the CEO and the CFO was kind of the most important relationship out there. But now we're seeing that huge emphasis on that technology finance relationship. And I think over the next few years, we're just going to see it grow.
I think everyone's in agreement with you because the very strong and somewhat strong really outweighs the somewhat weak.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to get into a few concluding thoughts here. Um, as finance teams look towards navigating 2025, having a well-defined agenda that balances growth and stability, it's going to be absolutely critical. So finance leaders are going to have to address a lot of the things that we talked about: maturing debt, increasing regulatory demands, geopolitical uncertainty. But they're also going to be continuing to drive transformation efforts, collaboration, and innovation. So, to handle those complex internal and external demands, finance leaders need visibility into the entire organization. And that's something that an ERP system like NetSuite can help with because it helps organizations essentially operate more effectively by automating core processes and providing real time visibility into operational and financial performance. And as I mentioned, there are AI capabilities embedded across the suite. So NetSuite enables finance teams, really gives finance teams the opportunity to incorporate the technology into their workflows without the extra expense or the clunky integration with associated with bolt-on solutions. Can't say it enough, bolt-on solutions are not great. Um, in addition to that, NetSuite as a cloud-based system, it receives regular updates to help ensure customers always have the latest AI capabilities as a part of their software, which is huge because as we all know, AI is moving very, very fast. With that, I know we have about 5 minutes left, so I did want to see if we could get a couple questions in.
Yeah, we have a couple questions from the audience, but let's start with this one. How do you recommend CFOs and their teams get started with AI?
I think the biggest piece of advice I can give, and I emphasize this over and over, um, is the fact that you should start with things that are present in your platform if you have it. And if you are considering perhaps like looking into an ERP system, or you're in the market for one, look towards ones that are actively incorporating AI into their system, just because, as I mentioned before, trying to like add on bolt on situations after the fact is not great. It's going to take a lot more money and work to get it to work smoothly. It's trying to like make a shoe that's too small fit. Um, and then trying to make your own AI models and train them. That's also not the greatest option as well, because it's a huge amount of time and resources. So prioritizing just like little wins that you can get from an existing system, that's going to be huge.
And I think there's just a general kind of outlook on AI. Where can I learn more about NetSuite's AI offerings?
Yeah, great question. So if you Google NetSuite AI, our page on NetSuite AI will pop right up at the top of the Google search. It gives a lot of examples that I didn't get into today, but of the different things that we're doing from both advisor capability and that assistant capability, and the specific of what products we have in each. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or through my email, and I can get you connected with someone who is much more knowledgeable than I am.
Yeah, I mean, we always encourage the conversation to keep going. And I think CFOs are really just curious as to what the role of CFO is going to look, in your opinion, in the future.
I think the we've talked about the evolving role of the CFO for a couple of years, and I think that automation and AI capabilities is really gonna push that evolvement, the evolution forward. um, so I think where it's gonna be is gonna be a much more front of the business, public facing role that collaborates across the organization, because the fact is that with technology in place, they're not stuck doing crunching the numbers for hours upon hours on end and just reporting after the fact. Instead, they can start forecasting different scenarios and helping different departments choose the best path forward and one that most aligns with the company's overall financial goals and strategic goals.
Yeah, so I think people are also really curious about what three things are required to modernize finance in the CFO role, and what your thoughts on that would be.
That's a great question. I think the one thing I'm going to say, if I could hammer this home, is clean data, clean centralized data. We get all excited about AI and things like that, but the fact is that things like AI and automation, they're only as good as the data that you put in. So if you have data that is maybe has a bunch of like duplicate entries or anomalies or things like that, it, the output's only as good as your data. So operating off of centralized, up-to-date data is number one. Um, Second to that, I would say having that widespread view against across both finance and operations and consolidating that data in a centralized place. Some businesses we've seen get stuck in the rut of maybe the finance team has great data, maybe HR has great data, but they never see anything because everything's just stuck in their own different system. Working to have systems that connect, or a system that has all those different modules and can bring them together, is just going to help keep that data clean, up to date, and make sure that you're making decisions with every part of the business in mind. The last thing I'll say is that I think to modernize the finance function, there are really quick wins in automation and AI that you can take advantage of. Things like uh, data entry, making sure that having a tool in place to compare different transactions to identify any anomalies, that's going to be a huge thing in just creating more time for the finance team. Um, Jess from SVP, the SVP from Vitalize Health, actually mentioned that she actually had someone automate himself out of the job. He used to do all data entry and just reconciling accounts and things like that. And their technology became so good that he kind of came forward and was like, what do I do now? And now he does quite a bit of FP&A, which is much more of a value add for the company. So just focusing on those quick wins that you can get to free up your team.
That is absolutely great, Megan. And I think that is all the time we have today. Thank you all for connecting with us. A very special nod to Megan and, of course, the entire NetSuite team. Again, this conversation is just the beginning. I encourage you to keep the conversation going, connect with Megan on her LinkedIn, or visit the NetSuite website, and keep an eye out for our post-event email, which will include a link to the full recording, the slide deck, and more info on NetSuite. This concludes today's program. Until next time, stay well and stay connected. Thank you.